So I don't want to take up too much of your time,
Sure.
but I want to start by talking about just a little history, like how you got into this kind of design world. Were you always someone who loved visual art? Did you study visual art in school? What was your journey like?
So it's kind of funny because my mom was an artist, and
Uh-huh.
very, very good, and studied at the Chicago Art Institute, got
Oh, wow.
scholarships when she was like 17 years old. So she was very, very good at it. And as her daughter, because it wasn't like innate to me to be able to draw or see, I was very, very visual, but it wasn't like an innate thing where I was just able to immediately draw. And back then, our moms thought that you were kind of like born with a talent or you weren't,
Right.
so I was a theater girl all the way.
Me
I
too.
was,
Me too.
I sang, I danced, I acted, I went to
I
theater
didn't sing or
school.
dance, but I acted.
Yes, I was
Mhm.
way into that. And I went to theater school at Illinois State University.
Oh,
I didn't
wow.
finish there. I finished at DePaul University in social sciences and women's studies. Don't even ask. It took forever
Me
to get out of
too.
school.
Same trip. Started out wanting to be an actress, ended up as a psych women's studies major.
Oh my God, that's crazy. Because I thought that was a made up major. Well, it sort of was a made up major because in the end, I had so many credits that DePaul, my advisor at DePaul was like, well, you could make up this social sciences degree. And that's what I did.
I was like, what the fuck do I had to graduate a semester early because my parents ran out of money to pay for tuition and I had enough credits to graduate. And I went into my advisor and she was like, yeah, I think we could do this psychology women's studies thing because that's all you took.
That's what I
So
took too.
funny. Did you like me know every feminist critique of Freud but never actually bother to read Freud?
Probably at the time, probably don't remember it now, but yeah, I mean, like philosophy courses and religion courses and psychology. And it was like, okay, you have a social sciences degree. And I had one credit left that I had to take. It was statistics. And the only one left, the only course left was a business one. And I hadn't even
Oh
taken
no.
calculus.
No, 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 no.
I
I
had to
at
take
least
this.
took it in the psych department where it was like statistics for people who could barely
It
subtract.
was horrifying. And so I had to be like tutored and I got a really hard earned C minus in the thing. And I was like, yay, I'm out. So I was not like, I was very visual, like my whole life. My mom's cousin helped her decorate the house. And I just remember like being engrossed in whatever they were doing. And he was the one that was like he was mixing modern tables with Queen Anne chairs. And
Uh-huh.
I was obsessed with the whole
Oh
the
wow,
whole
so
process.
early.
He was really good at it. And so I was just really I was really obsessed with what they did in the house. And so I told my mom I wanted to go to school for interior design. And she said, oh, honey, but you have to be able to draw for that. And then I was like, what about fashion design? You have to be able to draw for that too. And so I went for theater because I was like, I was only going to ever do anything creative, or
Uh-huh.
like something psychological because that's just where my mind was. So graduated with the crazy social sciences degree, worked in advertising. I was a
Okay.
copywriter. I had the thought of going to law school for about 5 seconds, and then I was like, that's a lot of school. My dad's a lawyer, my sister's a lawyer. And so
Right.
there was the thought of maybe I'll go to law school, and then there was the thought of maybe I'll get a master's in social work, but master's of an MSW. So I didn't do that.
I
Um,
didn't do psychology because I slept through the GREs. So I was like, well, I guess I'll take the LSAT
well, you became that, and so did well at
for a
that, I
minute.
think. So yeah, so I was in advertising, I was copywriting, and then I was at a real estate company in their advertising department, and I was by default just having to do graphic design because there was nobody
Uh-huh.
there that was doing it. And so I learned like, oh, I'm pretty good visually. Like I was really good at like composition of stuff and didn't
Hmm.
really like pursue much beyond that, and then had kids
Uh-huh.
and was home with kids. And I was like, board off my rocker, and I started sewing. I started making handbags, and I was terrible. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. I had bought some patterns, but had a really hard time following patterns. So I was like taking apart bags that I had and trying to figure out how they were made. And then like it took like a year, maybe more, and then I figured it out. But I had gone into the quilt shop, the local quilt shop in Danville, California. And I had this very floppy felt bag that I'd made. And they were like, have you ever heard of interfacing? And I was like, no, what's that? And so they taught me how to sew. And from there, I was making bags. And then I started selling the bags eventually. I started selling them in boutiques in Oakland and Berkeley and all over the Bay Area. And then I was selling them online this is like 2004 or 5. I started selling them online in my own shop.
You started making them and when you actually could make money from it?
I think it was 2 years. I think it was
That's
2
amazing,
years.
right?
I was, I become like possessed by something, and I've got to like learn it. And I'm like,
me too.
I'm trying to, and I wasn't making a whole lot of money from the bags initially, but then I was part of the eBags independent designer program, and I was selling them on my own website. And then I don't remember what year it was, but Etsy opened at some point in there. And there were tons of handmade handbags just flooding the online space. Right. And it was very hard to differentiate between like what was a quality handmade bag and what wasn't. And then everybody was using Amy Butler fabric at the time. And so I mean, starting to get towards like 2007, 2008. And I was like, what would differentiate me? And I'd always played with Photoshop. So I got a Wacom graphics tablet, which was the Bamboo at the time, which was basically a toy. And I started drawing into Photoshop, just digitally drawing. Still your lines.
Even though you couldn't draw and you were never able to draw. You're not an artist.
Not an artist. And so I was like, and eventually, and then that took like a year too. Eventually, I was like, that looks like what I was trying to make it look like. And I was shocked by myself. And I found on Amazon a book that was fabric design for Photoshop. And it was literally this spiral bound thing that came from some guy in like Amsterdam or somewhere. And it had a CD in it. And it was, it was just like a guy. I made this book and printed it, Xeroxed it off and put it in a little spiral bound thing and shipped it off. And that was how I learned to use Photoshop to index colors and put things into repeat. And literally, like sometimes I'll still pop that book out because there's still some relevant stuff in it, even though Photoshop has completely changed. So that was how I started. I created an entire collection of fabric on there.
How did you get them made?
This is the funny part. As I started to be finishing my fabric, Spoonflower opened, the digital fabric printing company here in North Carolina, which is now owned by one of those photo places. I can't remember which.
I've used them. I've used them particularly for, I've made a couple of these crazy Arsenal quilts because my son is obsessed with Arsenal. And then we have a really good friend of the family who's obsessed with Arsenal. So like weirdly, some lunatic has been making all these Arsenal fabrics on Spoonflower. And like I may be the only
You're the one buying them. That's awesome. So they were in beta testing. And so I had emailed and asked if I could get in on their beta testing. And I did. And then I had all this stuff that I printed up and then I made it into bags. And by this point I was like, I want this for my bags, but like, do I want to sell fabric? And so I was like, maybe I want to get this fabric licensed. And so I made it into a whole bunch of stuff, quilts and bags and aprons and whatever I could think of. And I went to Quilt Market just to walk the show and meet fabric companies. And before Quilt Market opens, I don't know if they still do it, but there was this thing called Schoolhouse, and they had like little classes basically to sell fabrics ahead of the show opening. And there was a really, really crowded room that I happened to pop by, and it turned out that it was the Schoolhouse class was, so you want to be a fabric designer. And this thing was packed, like hundreds of people in there. I'm like, ooh, everybody wants to be a fabric designer. And I'm sitting there going, in my suitcase, I have all the fabrics I have designed made into things. And nobody really knew about Spoonflower yet. So at the end of it, I went up and I just talked to the woman from the fabric company that happened to be teaching it. And I was like, can I make an appointment with you? And then I realized, okay, this is how I'm going to get appointments with companies, I'm going to ask for the creative director. I mean,
Oh,
I was
right.
literally like learning as I was going. And I was like, but I went going, I'm going to go get my fabric licensed. My husband was like, oh my God, I'm going to get a phone call with a lot of tears. And that was, I met with like, I don't know, 5 or 6 different companies. Some were like, oh, I really appreciate your tenacity. Literally said that. She had said it twice in my career. I really appreciate your tenacity. I was like, anyways, so I ended up coming home with the promise of a contract, and that's
From
how
where?
and wasn't Art Gallery. I ended up with Art Gallery 2 fabric companies later, and have been with them since
So
2012.
difference between sort of the print off fabrics at Spoonflower and the kind of like the way that they construct the fabric that you're making now, the sort of actual professional
So
stuff?
yeah, so it's Art Gallery screen prints their fabrics in Korea, and they have always been extremely picky about the hand of their fabric and the way it feels, and that their motto has always been feel the difference. I think
Yes.
it's because I believe Walter started in the garment industry. And so their fabric has always had this kind of hand that you can obviously use for quilting, but it also draped really well for
Right.
clothing.
I love the hand of their fabric. I mean, it's just that slickness. I think
Yeah,
it's,
you
I
really,
actually have like an emotional reaction to it. It just makes me feel good.
I have always felt the same way. It's just really, I really think it's the best fabric in the industry. I might be biased, but I really do think it really is tops. And yeah, there's a difference in the hands of the fabric, and probably the printing quality is different from digital to screen printing, and you can only use, I think we use 16 colors in screen printing. In digital, you can use as many as you want.
Right. Now, what about sort of the designs? Where did that, you have a very specific aesthetic. And is that something that developed for you, or did you feel like that was coming out of you from the beginning?
It was
And
probably coming.
how would you describe your aesthetic?
I'm untrained, and because I think because there were no boundaries given to me, I think I just became boundaryless because
Uh-huh.
I didn't know that there were rules. I mean, I
Right.
imagined there were rules. I didn't want to know what they were. And so I think that I have always been, I've never been a perfectionist. I've
Uh-huh.
always liked that things look imperfect. And
Uh-huh.
people I used the word maximalism many years ago because I was rebelling against minimalism. I was like, I'm
Yes.
not a minimalist, I'm a maximalist. And that was, like in 2011 when I was saying that, and nobody was saying the word maximalism. But it was really, for me, it was just a rebellion, because at the time there was that low volume
Yeah, yeah.
movement in quilting, and I was like, it's color value first of all.
Volume. I want more volume.
Like, I was like, put up. I was like, but also I was like, it's color value, it's not volume. So I was just rebelling against that, because I just loved color from the very beginning. In my handbags, I was mixing and matching patterns, and I had no I was without boundaries. I just innately knew, like, to mix the scale of patterns and to mix the different kinds of patterns you were looking at. I don't know where I learned that. Maybe it was from watching my mom and Bernie when I was growing up. But I would still call my designs maximalist, but I think that, and I always use the term curated maximalism, because while I feel boundaryless, there are certain boundaries. But yeah, so I think that my style is expressive and colorful, and there's a certain amount of vintage in it. Like,
That's one of the things that I love too, is that it feels both very modern, but also it has this connection to the past, connection to a sort of vintage aesthetic that I really, really like.
that's why I'm looking forward to reading your books. That
Yes.
next one I'm extremely excited about.
It's funny because I always say like that the Venn diagram of stuff that I write about is basically me, because like you, I'm like, well, their boundaries are boring. Like, I don't want to just write like, I've written about psychedelics, and I've written about motherhood.
Saw that.
I wrote like a historical novel that's sort of structured around the Holocaust, and then this Victorian novel, and I've written contemporary novels, and I've written murder mysteries. And I know that my publisher is kind of like, is there a through line so we can find a single audience? And I'm like,
You.
apparently not. Apparently it's just this idea of being able to do whatever I feel like in the moment.
Isn't that, but I think that's the thing that gets me about like today's like algorithm world is that they want you to be this little shape in a little box, and that's all you get to be. And if you don't stay in that box, nobody gets to see you. Or the humans that read your books are interested in multiple things. They're not just interested in the one thread. And so it just boggles my mind that in business and in this, social media world, we're supposed to be, and that's it.
So, I find that really, and I do think that ends up narrowing your imagination, both as a consumer of creative work and also as an artist. I feel like this algorithm feeds you things that it thinks you're going to like based on what you liked before. And if you're someone with like you with a maximalist approach, you don't want to just see what you liked before. You want to like something new. You don't want to just write what you wrote before. You want to write something new, or like, I always say that like the through line is me. If there's an aesthetic, it's me in all that like weird complexity, contradiction. And that's what makes it fun for me. If I had to just, I wrote 7 murder mysteries about one character. And I fucking hated it by then. I hated her. And because she was so closely based on me, I'm like, do I hate me? But as soon as I started like busting out of that, it made everything feel possible and exciting and interesting again.
Did your publisher accept that the deadline's you? Well, there you go.
Yeah, and the very first novel that I wrote that wasn't a murder mystery, I had to go to a small press because everyone was like, "Oh, you're a mystery writer. What are you writing this thing for?" But eventually people start following you. I think that's basically what happened to you too, right? Like you weren't working in that minimalist aesthetic. So then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, there's a whole group of people standing behind me who love this too.
Yeah, and after I learned to paint, like I just picked up a paintbrush because I was taking this course that was called Make Art That Sells, and she was like, with whatever medium you're working in, try another one. And I was like, oh God, I'm so afraid to analog. And so I started drawing and painting without Photoshop, and then that was when the real explosion happened.
And now do you for some of your fabrics or for all your fabrics, do you start with a brush? Do you start with and then
almost everything is started with a pencil or a brush.
Amazing.
And even if it's eventually drawn over in Illustrator, which is vectors and way neater than Photoshop, there's usually a pencil drawing to start with.
Is your mom still alive?
No, my mom passed in November 2024.
I'm sorry, but you got to see this evolution of you, right?
Yeah, she did.
Did she ever say, you know what, all those times I told you couldn't draw, it turns out I know what I was talking about, or anything like that?
I don't think she really remembered. I think those are things that, like, as a kid and as a teenager that I, like, latched onto and then made the story probably even bigger in my head.
Yes.
And I think that, like, there was never any intent on her part. Right. So I think that she probably didn't even remember, and I wouldn't have said much to her about that. I think that she knew that I was creative, but didn't know how I was going to be able to get that creativity out in the world because, the opportunities for her were so limited. Right. Like once we had the internet and we could look things up, we didn't have to go over to the library and go through encyclopedias and try to figure out how to do things. Like the way I was able to learn was that we had everything at our fingertips. Still back in like 2004, it was like, combing through archives of I don't know what, like still couldn't find a lot of stuff, but I was able to learn more. So I think, no, she never was able to say that. I think that she did say that she once said, don't you want to maybe try being like drawing more realistically? And I was like, huh? And then I realized that that she could only, like, what she could do was see something and draw it and paint it. And I was not going from real life at all. And so she was like wondering like why I didn't do that. But then in the end, I think she was like, wow, like she's so much more free than I am.
Did she continue to draw and paint throughout her life, or did she put it aside?
Fortunately, she had put it aside probably
all that
25 years. Probably been
all those
25 years
women,
ago.
all that the wasted potential, I mean
Hmm.
their lives were constricted and then, by
She
the
did
time.
too. When we were young, she did a lot of like pop art. She did like Big Macs and
Uh,
ho-hos and colas and all sorts. And all of her friends had all this pop art that she did of food, which is so interesting for that time because like there was also the weird eating stuff like with the women of their
right.
generation. And my mom was painting things like that she would probably never have eaten.
I know my
But
mom was on so many of those diet, like I remember she
slim
was on this
fast.
diet where she had little packets of things that she mixed up and that's all she ate. I think
Oh,
she
it's
got
so
that one.
sad. It's so sad. I look back on that, I'm like, oh, the Tab Cola and the Slim Fast and the like awful. Oh my God. But
Although
yeah,
if
so
I saw a tab right now, I'd probably be like, huh, and give that a try. Or
I
Fresca
think
or
they still
whatever.
make them.
They
I
make
painted a
tabs.
couple cans not too long ago just because I was like painting for my mom at that point. I was like wanting to, I don't know, there was some sort of tribute with the Tab and I painted them with ho-hos.
Yeah. You didn't
What?
send those off to art
Those will
galleries.
not
These
be on
hobo
fabric. There will not be tab and ho-ho fabric. But I painted them together, a tab and a ho-ho, because it just seemed funny to me. Like, we're going to drink the tab cola, but we're going to secretly drink the ho-ho.
exactly the problem. Yeah, that probably says everything we need to know about the 1970s and early 80s.
I know. I feel so bad, but they were limited, but she painted when I was younger, and then it was like a good 25 years. But when she was going through chemotherapy, I was like, she's so bored, and she was, she couldn't leave the house, and she loved to go schmying around. She would say, "Mom,
Yeah.
we're gonna go spaziering. We're gonna
Uh,
go here. We're gonna go there as soon as I'm better." In fact, like a week before she passed, she was telling me, "When I get better, Barry, we're gonna go spaziering." And so she would love to go out and she couldn't go out. And so I said, what if I buy some paint and some paper and maybe some canvases and you paint something? And she could not for the life of her decide what to paint. And so she printed out a picture of a cake with sprinkles on it. And so I kept that painting that she did was the last thing she ever painted, and then we did prints of it on my website, and we gave that to the Pancreatic Cancer
oh,
Foundation. Yeah,
send me a JPEG of that and we'll pop that up on the screen.
yeah, absolutely.
I love the idea of ending there, and I've taken almost
Yeah,
half an hour from you. This
thank
was so
you.
much fun.
Thank you for
Um,
interviewing me. That was fun, really fun.
I can't wait to see pictures of this amazing house that you're making and
We'll
this huge
see.
transition. And
We're
this winter
crazy.
hasn't dissuaded you. It's
No. Okay, so
really
it was freezing
cold
here. It's really, really cold up there, as I understand it. Are you up there now, or are you in
in
California?
the area, but we were in New York and then in DC, and I have not. I mean, I was a kid in Montreal, and I was like, this is that cold. This is
Yeah,
that cold.
it was
So, and then I
cold this
thought
winter.
maybe my thoughts about like, oh, maybe we'll move to the East Coast.
Well, we haven't been up there this winter. We're going as soon as we get an offer on the house. So it may still
Uh-huh.
be cold, but not frigid.
Yeah.
It'll be mud season, as I understand it. But when we get up
And
there,
then you're gonna
and
have black flies, and then you're
yeah,
gonna
I
have
heard about the black
mosquitoes.
flies.
Like,
Well, I hope I
okay,
live
I'll
my
keep the
dream.
lights on in the Bay Area for you, Barry.
I might be back in Danville in about 2.5 seconds.
All right, well, thank you
Okay.
so much.
All right. See you later.
See you
Bye.
later.
Thank you.
Bye.